Hello, everybody. Lee's back at you with another Wall Street Journal discussion, looking at some of the best articles. Grab your newspaper. Oh, you don't get the Wall Street Journal. Oh, you don't have an extra $400 a year to have it delivered to your front porch. You can count on me. I'm your friend, and I will illegally share what I see in my bought for newspaper today. And I hope you enjoy it, and be glad to see some of your comments. I've just got four short articles I looked at today, and hope you enjoy them, and hope you find some of the observations mind tickling. I hope it causes you to think, and if I do that, I'm a happy man, because I love to think about these things like under the covers a little bit. So first of all, the article, obviously everybody's mind, the Pence-Harris clash, the vice president debate last night, and so it went in a little bit about that debate and what they debated about and the blows each other landed, which is typically what the media focuses on. I thought I'd have a few different observations. First of all, the moderator. So was the moderator neutral? And we always hope to have a neutral moderator, right? But nobody's neutral, right? Everybody comes in with biases. So we just understand what those biases are to begin with. Give you a good sample of this is what my father always taught me. He said, "Son, order your bookcases by authors' names. Who wrote the book really matters, because where they stand is what you want to understand before you read that book." So I look at people and where they stand, and so by the way, the moderator last night, she's writing a book on Nancy Pelosi right now. So okay, where does she stand? I suspect somewhere to the left. How far to the left? I'll leave it up to you to decide, and maybe it doesn't matter. But I often like news organizations and people, really, when they discuss things, they'll have this phrase they use, right? And you'll recognize it right away. Okay? You're probably ahead of me. In full disclosure. So Wall Street Journal will run something every once in a while, and they'll say, in full disclosure, Wall Street Journal is owned by, XYZ News Corp, and we, in fact, own this other company, which we're now reporting. So anytime there's any question of a bias, they ought to put it on the table and say, in full disclosure, okay? And we ought to do that as individuals too. In full disclosure, I am a Christian, so therefore, my foundational beliefs rest here, okay? And so people can see that. Now, I don't think they need to throw everything you say away, but they can see where you set. And they know that may come in, your training or background, whatever may come into play. And then you can have a debate, on reasonable grounds with that being disclosed. So I think we ought to start, the moderators ought to start all these. Say, in full disclosure, I work for CNN as a part-time, analyst, and I am writing a book on Nancy Pelosi. Okay, so and so I think we could say, okay, great. And by the way, I think it would cause them to be much more careful in their moderation. I thought the moderator did a fairly good job last night. She, I didn't like it when she used the, find people on both sides. We all know that's been put to bed, and I think shame on her for bringing that up, because that full context does not say that, and everybody knows that. On both sides, by the way. It's a lie on one side, on the other side, it's frustration because you can't get around the lie. And by the way, it's creating a constant irritant for Trump because every time he's in a press release, they want him to make another definitive statement on white supremacy. Meanwhile, the far left is the ones tearing up the street, not the far right. Don't get me wrong. make real clear on me. The pox on both sides. I hate the far right and I hate the far left. But anyways, so the other observation I did on the clash last night between Pence and Harris was looking for contrast. Yeah, I know the fly on Pence's forehead, the smiles for Harris. I get it. I get it. People, this is a sport, and it's a shame because I'm an ugly old guy, and when I debate you, I don't want you to pick apart my gray beard, my spots on my face, and so on. Just what are my thoughts, and are they worth saying, and are they worth debating? But where did you see the contrast? And this theme that I see that I think a lot of people are picking up now, whether it'll mean anything in the election or not, because we do vote, on what we see. John F. Kennedy is a great example. Nixon looked awful on TV, and he should have never gone on TV. And for those of you that are older like me, remember that. But and so I understand. I get it that we vote sometimes on the smile of Kamala Harris or the stern face of Pence. Whatever you like. But really, the contrast I saw was one sees government actions and government, and they won't use the word control, but government driving things in big projects, right? And the other says individual rights. In fact, you could see it with COVID. One sees, and I'll get to a little bit later on another opinion article about lockdowns, mandatory masks, right? You'll see that mandatory mask come out. That should have been done, right? Like it would have mattered, right? But it still should have been done because government should be doing everything they can. Where the other side is people figure out when to use masks and when not, and they'll figure out their risk assessment in life, which we do all the time. I am in that high risk group. I have coffee with guys 3 to 4 times a week to do discussions. We don't wear masks. We've, managed that risk very well ourselves. And now I don't go to church where there's hundreds of people anymore. I've stopped that. There's other places I don't go. Typically don't go shopping at all. But I haven't locked myself in the basement. So that contrast, I think, is real important to see that high level contrast to say, what kind of government are you going to get? Sometimes we're drilling down too much on the individual things, the Green New Deal. Of course, it's a big deal, but we're working on that one, working on this one. The fact of the matter is, whatever they get passed, Obama in his first 2 years had both houses, the House and the Senate, and obviously had the presidency. And for 2 years, all he could get passed was Obamacare. Okay. And so, but you got to look at, so sometimes they can't get a lot done, but you got to look at the kinds of things they're going to get done. And you could have predicted, whether you liked Obama or not, you could have predicted that he would work on nationalized health care and get that passed. And so, because that's what he believes, other than the free market system, that's who he believes handles that better. So I think that overall contrast is important, and I wanted you to see that and see if you agreed with me. Number 2 article. Poverty's been worse in the pandemic. So, I do some work in Mexico among people who are very poor, very, very poor. Basically, they worry about eating the next day. Can they eat tomorrow? And so I understand this a little bit due to my volunteer work down there. But let me show you a graph here and add that to my screen here. This is out of Wall Street Journal. So, so this is the amount in poverty in the world since 1990. I mean, sorry, 2010. And in 2010, we had over a billion in poverty. So poverty today is described as living on less than $1.90 US per day. That's what we define poverty. Before the inflation and everything, that used to be called $1 a day, but now the standard is now $1.90 a day. And I remember back then doing social work and saying, a billion people in poverty. It's a huge deal. And many people will tell you that we're not making progress on the world's poverty, and they're absolutely wrong. It made huge progress, and by the way, to some people's negative thoughts, it's been because of capitalism. And I may get to that a little bit, but so the green part of that bar, by the way, is sub-Saharan Africa, and the next bar down is South Asia. So the interesting thing to note is last year we were down to around 600 million living in extreme poverty. And by the way, extreme poverty is all you're trying to do is eat one day at a time. And in fact, eating usually today. Tomorrow's not even taken care of. So we're down to 600 million. Already this year, the estimates run from about 30 million to 130 million people have been added back into that category of living on less than $1.90 a day. So huge change with the pandemic, and it's probably not something you're seeing on your normal news. And I thought you'd find it interesting. Plus interesting to know that there's still 600 million people. Now again, Africa is 2/3 of that number. Okay, by far and large. By the way, what you're not seeing in the area where I go to is Latin America. Latin America is a very small portion of that, and if you go back to the 90s, there were a billion people in East Asia and China living in poverty. That is virtually been erased. That has really dropped dramatically, and there was a 500 million in India. And of course, market capitalism, is really changed that dramatically in China and India and pulled a lot of people out of poverty. Africa's a different story, and having been there, it's certainly a different kind of poverty, but still. So the world's made a lot of progress. Sometimes it's all as bad, skies falling, and it's not. But if you wanted to solve poverty in the world today, you'd go to Africa if you had a way to solve it that could be implemented in lots of countries. The countries I was in was run by an absolute monarchy, one of the few monarchies left. Swaziland, and absolute monarchy, and the king runs everything. Difficult until that government system changes to change that, but nevertheless, it is what it is. So poverty has gotten worse in the pandemic, something you probably haven't heard from your other news sources. Way to go, Wall Street Journal. And you heard it here. So, and then opinion piece, is Biden the shutdown candidate? And it's interesting article on the opinion page. I wanted to say that twice to make sure you understand it was on opinion pages. The idea that the writer tried to get across was, should the question be at the debate, will you shut down the economy if the infection rate grows to a certain threshold? Will you shut down the economy? And, it would appear, looking at what each candidate said, Trump has said, we can live with this 3% infection rate. we can work as hard as we can on the critical people and critical populations, but we can get the economy going again. Biden has clearly said virus first, then the economy. Now, does that mean a lockdown economy? Hard to tell right now. So maybe they're both a little bit hard to pin down on this, but the question should be, will you shut down the economy? And because there's lots of people in the economy that have gone through this whole time, still working, still getting us groceries and so on. And Trump has obviously believed that we could add a lot of people to that, especially school children. By the way, you're noticing there's no big news. All these kids are back to school. Two buses stopped in my house today. The two two different high schools serve our neighborhood. Interesting enough, and kids are going like crazy. Are you hearing any news about these mass infections in these high schools, junior highs, and public schools and private schools? You're not hearing it, are you? And remember, the unions and many parents. So, by the way, New York City, you can see the liberal bent there says we're at above a 3%, so they're doing lockdowns in certain neighborhoods. I think they do it by zip codes, if I remember right. And of course, the Orthodox Jews are going crazy there, right? They're doing demonstrations and some pretty physical demonstrations there because they're being told they can't meet. You got to understand, an Orthodox Jew, their religion is everything, right? I mean, it is just everything to them. And so all of a sudden being told that, no, you're not allowed in this free country is a difficult pill to swallow. And so I feel for them, but that's the ideology of the government control part of the beliefs here. So that question gets at your ideology. It gets at the question: do you think the answer lies in the government, or does the answer lie in American people? And remember, Pence did this. You could argue whether it was good or bad, but he did this last night in the debate when asked, should you held this this confirmation celebration of Amy Coney Barrett out in the Rose Garden? And he said, look, the president thinks individuals can manage their own risk, and it was outside where the scientist says it's safer, and people have the ability to put a mask on, and he left it at that. And but that's very frustrating if you're on the other side, because you believe that they never should have had that, because there should have been rules in place that shouldn't have allowed that to happen. So you understand that's getting at the two ideologies. Whether you agree with one or the other, it doesn't matter. But in our politics and when we're interviewing people, we need to look at that and determine what their real ideologies are, and forget about the fly on the forehead. We won't remember it 6 months from now and could care less. So and so, yeah, Joe's got a question here. You think New York City is a petri dish for the left, meaning they're trying some things out to see how it goes. That way, if Biden-Harris got in, they might have an idea on how it would go if they locked down the U.S. Maybe. Thanks for the comment, Joe. It may be that, and San Francisco and L.A. has done a few things like that too. Of course, locking down the schools and keeping them closed later. It could be that they're using them as a sample for the rest of the country to use. Of course, a lot of the Republican areas of the country are back open, and schools are back open, and cases slightly up, but deaths certainly aren't. And so it's sure. I think they're having a difficult time. They're having a difficult time Trying to get my thoughts straight here. Another comment. Master science versus science. That's right. Your science or my science, and that's a lot of times what it is. So, or the science that was there 3 months ago, and the science is not there now. Though the science, I think, for the kids in school was always very strong. We just ignored it. So sometimes, science, our science is that we'll ignore the good science right now because it doesn't fit our ideology. By the way, I just wanted to close with a couple things there's huge companies out there buying hundreds and hundreds of homes. And some of you are not aware of this. One of them is called Invitation Homes. You may have never even heard of it. They're the dirty little secret in the industry. But Invitation Homes pulled another $1 billion into the fund. It's an investment fund, by the way. You invest in, and they go out and buy homes and then rent them homes out. And and they own 80,000 homes in the U.S. Invitation, 80,000 homes. They're buying at a clip of about $200 million a quarter. Okay, since they paused at the onset of the pandemics, paused for a little while, and then took right off again. And so, and by the way, they're turning them into rentals, right? Okay. So, and they say the people renting the houses are in six-figure incomes and in good shape, but they just want to rent a house. So, an observation I would have is there's many of you that think that the home market is outrunning itself, that it's going ahead of itself, and the value is not there anymore. I've always been taught, watch the investors. When they back out of the home market, it's overheated because they have to protect their investment. Now, they can lose a few percent, but they're not going to lose big, right? Because they've got lots of people counting on them. Those big investors are buying houses right now. They believe it to be a good value, and they believe they can be rented enough to still get them a return on their investment and maintained. By the way, they obviously have to be maintained as rental property. So I think there's a good sign there that says that market is really good. So, hey, thanks for the comments today. Appreciate it. Hope it caused you to think a little bit and give me some other ideas. I appreciate them. Cheers. Have a great day. See ya.